Hello, and welcome to our second video here in this AI 102 series. Hopefully you enjoyed the first video we did on just the introduction into AI. Now we're going to take it a step further, and we're going to look at one of the various, we're going to look at many different components. We're going to look at one of the first ones, which is the AI vision service. And primarily, we're going to look at how do we develop on this AI vision service. Now, keep in mind that Azure AI Vision gives you access to a lot of advanced algorithms that process images and return information based on the visual information that you're interested in seeing, all the various features that you're interested in. So let's take a look here. So in here, we're going to talk about how to analyze and manipulate images. We're going to talk about how to create a custom vision model. We're going to look at how to detect and recognize faces. And then finally, we're going to look at how do you analyze video. So in the first section we're going to look at, we're going to look at analyzing and manipulating images. And in here, we're going to talk about, understanding the features and functionality of in image analysis. We're going to perform OCR, optical character recognition, and we're going to connect an app to an image analysis API. Now, keep in mind that within our AI vision service, there are four key components that we have. The first one, which we're going to talk about now, is image analysis, which looks at extracting many visual features from an image, such as the objects that are in their faces. If there's content that you don't want to see, like adult content or any auto-generated text, it'll generate those automated generated text descriptions for you. We also have OCR, optical character recognition, which can extract text from images that you have and photos and so forth and documents that you submit within there. We look at the face service, which can detect, recognize, and analyze human faces and images. And then finally, video analysis, which can look at spatial analysis to retrieve or to generate information about movements within those videos. Now, in our first one we're going to look at is we're going to look at image analysis. And with image analysis, what this allows us to do is to do quite a few different things. Images that are submitted into the AI model, for those images, we can generate captions and tags if we need to. We can do object detection if we need to detect all the various objects that are within that image. We can detect people within the image. We can actually generate and detect text, from within images, handwritten text and typed text for things like documents. We can generate smart cropped thumbnails. We can also remove background from images if that is something that you need. We also look at multimodal embedding. So if you want to do things like vectoring, where you want to find out similarities or differences between certain things, you have the ability to do that with vectoring. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then, of course, detecting products or brand recognition within images. So to give you an example, on the right side here, we have an image. It's an image of a mountain with some snow in there with the caption, "Wish you were here," almost like a postcard. We can actually feed this image into our vision service, our AI model. And then from here, we have the ability to go in and essentially pull some key things. We can, detect in this case, okay, there's an image of snow and a mountain here, and it's outdoor. So we can do caption-based information if we need to. We can detect objects themselves. We can detect and extract text from the image. In this case, "Wish you were here." We can create smaller thumbnails if we need to. And of course, generate metadata for that image. So then the question becomes, well, how do we do this? How do we go in and generate these images that we need? And let's give some examples of some of the code on how you would do that. So in our first example here, what we're going to do is we're going to look at just the initial setup. So in this case here, if you want to submit a request into the AI model, we're basically going to use the client analyze method here to submit that request. And in there, we're going to specify the image, the URI, the URL of the image, if you will. We're going to then specify, okay, what is it that we want? So we've defined what image we want to analyze. What do we want to analyze about that image? And these are visual feature options. So within here, it could be, I can generate captions, which you see here in our example. I can do something called dense captions. And the big difference between the two is captions is typically a one-liner, whereas dense captions can be up to 10 different lines of information pertaining to that image. So it gives you more captions, if you will. We can add tags if we need to. We can detect objects within there. We can create smart crops or smaller thumbnail of the image. We can, identify people as well as read text or any information from the image itself. So those are going to be all of our visual feature options that we have. And of course, you can always refer back to our SDKs for that information. And then any additional analysis options that you want to select, you can select those also. So here's an example of generating or submitting an image into the AI model for analysis. Now, this is not the full component because there's an additional piece that we need for this. And here you can kind of see a more well-crafted request. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to submit our request is an image analysis client. Now we need to submit the request to our AI model. So in order to do that, we've got to define the AI model's endpoint. So in our previous video, in our last video, we talked about how to, within your subscription, create an AI client, and then that generates a endpoint and a key. So you'll use that endpoint URI here, as well as the Azure credential key that you created with it. So you would find those and put those within here. Now, in addition, you can also generate, let's say, neutral gender type if you don't want to identify the male, female, whatever it may be of that individual, and you just want to keep it general. You can remove that by doing gender neutral captions. You can also define the language in which you want the output to be generated in. And we do support a lot of different languages. So this is the first component here. This is generating the client that we're going to use to submit the request. In the next section here, here's where we generate the request, which you saw in the previous slide there, where we're going to generate and specify the image that we want to upload, any features, any options that we want along with that. That will then be packaged and sent through this client, which is going to be sent through this URI and using this key. And then the AI model will receive it. It will analyze it based on what you've requested, and then it's going to generate an output for you. And that output, as you can see here in our next slide, is in the form of a JSON format. And in here's an example of what the output would look like. In this case, a man pointing at a screen. So that's our image analysis. Now you'll notice here there's a confidence level. Think of the confidence level as the probability of accuracy. So how confident is the AI model that how confident is it that it responded accurately? So how accurate is the response? So in this case, it's right at about 49%. As developers, this is going to be important for you because you can go in there and you can just define a threshold. I can say, you know what, if it's below 75% confidence level, I maybe want to kick it off and start another process. Or if it's above the 75% confidence level, then we're gonna take that response and process it like we normally would. So think of that as like the accuracy level. If there's any additional strings, you'll see names in there. You'll see that in there. And then finally, you have your smart cropped and your what's called the bounding box. So we've got our smart cropped aspect ratio and then our bounding box. The bounding box is important because the bounding box is essentially coordinates, if you will, within the image on where certain things were identified. So if you have an image with like 10 or 15 different objects, you'll see a bounding box for each object showing you that the AI model detected this object, that object, and it shows you exactly where in the image it found it. So I always like to tell people is think of this as GPS coordinates of an image or an object within the image. So that's something key to know. So that gives you an example of how you go in and generate a client and submit your request, your image, along with any visual features into your AI model. So now that we've discussed some of the code and some of the features that we get with AI, what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and we're going to do a quick demonstration on how this works. Now, to explain what I have here is I've got a split screen. I've got my VS Code running on the left. I've got my Azure portal running on the right here. And I'm going to walk you through a demonstration on exactly how this works. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to go and I need to do a git clone and download the essentially the lab files from Git repository. So I'm going to go in here and I would do that, which I've already done here. So it's already downloaded in this scenario. If you want to, you can go to github.com/Microsoft Learning/MS Learn-AI-Vision. That is where you can clone the repository. Now, once you've got the repository clone, which I have here on the left, you can see it. On the right, I need to create an instance of the AI service. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to go to the Azure AI Services page, and we're going to create a multi-service account. Remember, you can create a single instance, or you can create a multi-service account if you like. And in our previous video, we discussed the differences between those. So we're going to go in here, we're going to select Create, and we're going to specify where we're going to tie it to for billing purposes, what subscription, how it's essentially going to be paid for. The resource group that we want to put it in, the name of the region, the geographical location that we want it in. Keep in mind that regions have an impact when it comes to AI services. For a lot of Azure services, the region doesn't have a feature impact for most common things, but for AI it does. So definitely go back to the Microsoft Learn site and review, what's supported in each region. You'd specify a name for your instance that you want, select the pricing tier, and then acknowledge and agree to the terms, and make sure you read the responsible AI notice. If you want to allow this instance to be accessible from the internet, which we're going to do it just for this sake, but in a true production environment, you probably want your instance accessible only internally or through what we call private links and so forth, but we're going to keep it open for now. We're not going to tie this to any other services, so we don't need any managed identities. No tags, and then we would build it. Now, I've already created one here called Bobby Face AI Demo, just to give you an example of this. Now, here's what we really need from this. We need the keys and the endpoints. That's what we're going to need programmatically. If you remember in the slides, we talked about creating an AI client that it requires an endpoint URI and a Azure key. So in here, when you select keys and endpoints for the instance that I have, which is called Bobby Face AI Demo, this is the endpoint I'm going to need, and I can pick any one of the two keys here that I decide I want to use. Which key you use doesn't really matter. We give you two so that way you can alternate keys periodically for security purposes. Now, once you've got that generated, so now we have an endpoint where we can send our AI request as well as a key, which for simplicity's sake, think of it as an authentication process. It authorizes us to submit the request. Now, for this demo, I'm going to use C#, and you can do it in Python if you want to also. But in C#, I've got my information here. And the first thing that I need to do is I need to go into my app settings.json, and I need to go in and input the AI service endpoint and the key. So those are generated from here. So there, and then one of my keys, which is one of the two that we're using here. This is going to be required for the app to build a client that can be sent, so it can send the request to the AI service within Azure. So those have to be properly formatted and no typos or anything, or you will get errors when you try to run this. Now, once you've got that done, and then there are a couple additional things that we're going to do. So I'm going to close out of this browser for now. Let's go here to full screen this. And let's take a look at it from a code perspective. So one of the first things that you'll need to do is install a package. So we're going to go in here. We're going to open up a terminal. And we would install the Azure AI Vision Image Analysis package. So that's one of the first things that you need to do. So once you've done that, then you can continue on with this process here. So the next step that we're going to do here is we're going to import a namespace here. So the namespace that we're going to be bringing, which you can see I've done it here already, is using AI Vision Image Analysis, which we just installed a package for that. So we know that's the service that we're going to be using here. Now, further down, remember in the slide, we talked about generating a client. So you have to create that client for the request. And here it is right here. So we're going to go in. We're going to use this method to generate a client using the endpoint and the key that we previously defined in our app settings.json, which is right here. So we've got those two things in there. Now, once we've got that in there, then what we're going to do is we need to essentially define. So basically, this code is pulling an image from, in this case, street.jpg, which is coming from my image repository here. So that's what the application is going to be doing. But we've got to go in and define essentially the features that we want for this service. So further down here, you'll see right here, we're going to specify, we're going to get the captions, we're going to generate some dense captions, we're going to identify the objects, we're going to generate some tags, and identify people within here. So these are the things that when we submit the request to AI, that it's going to generate those things based off, it's going to analyze the image and generate that information for me on there. So that's the process, and there's some additional code that we have within here. Now, once we've got everything up and running, so let's kind of demonstrate this here. Then, of course, save it, and then you would run it, and you'll get an example of exactly how this works here. So if you notice here, it's analyzing the image right there. And notice here, it's a caption. So it generated a caption. So if you're wondering exactly what that is, so in this case here, which image are we looking at here? The street.jpg, the street one. So if you take a look here, you can see there's the image, and it generated the information for us. So a man walking a dog on a leash, which you can see here in the image. And they gave us a confidence rating of about 82%. So it's pretty confident. Now, so there's some additional things because I specified that I wanted dense captions. Because I specified that, it's going to give me a lot more detail. So if you just use the visual feature caption, you get one entry. But if you use dense captions, which I'll show you here, right here. So this is going to give me this visual features caption gives me the one-liner that you saw, man walking the dog. But then the dense caption option gave me some additional details here. So in here, it gave me, notice here, we've got a man walking a dog on a leash on the street, 82%. A man walking on the street, we've got a yellow car, we've got a black dog walking on the street, we've got a blurry image of a blue car, which you can kind of see back here. We've got a yellow taxi in here. So these are all just additional data sets that we have from that image. Now, so those are some of the things. So that gives you an example of how, if you properly format your client request and specify an image, then it will go in. So if you want to, let's test this out again here. Let's pick another image. Let me find my image here. So let's change this from street.jpg to, let's say, building.jpg. So now it's doing a building.jpg. And if you notice here, here's the image of the building. And if you notice here, the regular caption, a large white building with a dome and with a lawn, the United States Capitol in the background. And then our dense caption showed, because there's not really much to it here, something very similar. And of course, you can see the confidence rating on both of those. So hopefully you enjoyed this demonstration on the initial settings for just analyzing an image and generating captions about that image for it. Thank you.